If you've ever driven through New Hampshire, you've probably seen it on a license plate. Four little words that pretty much define the entire state. But here's the thing, that's not just some slogan cooked up by a marketing team. Nope, it's the final line of an absolutely incredible story from the American Revolution. A story that features one of the most stubborn, brilliant, and honestly overlooked generals of the entire war. So let's get into it.
Live free or die. I mean, it's intense, right? It's bold, it's uncompromising, and it comes straight from a man who didn't just say the words, he lived them.
So here they are. On the left, you've got General John Stark, our Revolutionary War hero, and on the right, that license plate you see all over the Granite State. So what's the connection?
Well, the answer is a wild story of principle, pure defiance, and a battle that honestly changed the whole course of American history. And it all starts with the man himself.
You know, before John Stark could become the hero of this story, he first had to quit the army. Yeah, you heard that right. He quit in disgust. And that move, that one act, tells you everything you need to know about his fiercely independent character.
And make no mistake, this guy was no rookie. He was a seasoned, battle-hardened veteran. He'd served with the legendary Rogers Rangers back in the French and Indian War. And when the Revolution kicked off, he was right there in the thick of it. Bunker Hill, Trenton, Princeton, the man was a proven, respected commander.
But then, in early 1777, the Continental Congress promoted a junior officer over him, an officer Stark felt had kind of ducked his duty at Bunker Hill. For a man of principle like Stark, this was a massive slap in the face. He felt totally ignored and disrespected. So, he resigned his commission and just went home.
Now, this is the crucial part. A few months later, New Hampshire desperately needs him to fight off a British invasion. He agrees to lead their militia, but on one very important condition. He would not take orders from the Continental Army. No one. He was going to be an independent commander, and that decision, it turned out to be absolutely critical.
Okay, let's hop over to the other side for a second. Let's look at the British perspective, because General John Burgoyne is leading this massive invasion force down from Canada, and his army is in some serious trouble. See, Burgoyne's grand plan was to slice the colonies in two, but his supply lines were stretched way too thin. His soldiers were low on food, his horses were gone, his cannons couldn't move. He was stuck deep in hostile territory, and he was getting pretty desperate.
So Burgoyne decides to roll the dice. He'd heard about a big American supply depot over in Bennington, Vermont, and he figured it was probably lightly guarded. So he sends a force of about 800 men, mostly German soldiers, under a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Baum, to go raid the place and grab everything they could.
And this sets up a classic David versus Goliath situation. On one side, you have Baum's force, highly trained professional German soldiers, these dismounted dragoons, backed by British marksmen. On the other side, Stark's militia, about 2,000 farmers and shopkeepers, literally carrying the guns they owned from home. These pros were about to run headfirst into the one man who'd refused to be a part of their world.
So the stage is set for this epic showdown near Bennington. And it's right here, as the two armies are getting ready to fight, that John Stark gives one of the most legendary pre-battle speeches of the entire war.
He just points to the enemy lines and says it. Plain and simple. He's telling his men, his neighbors, that this is it. It's all or nothing. Either they win this thing, or his wife Molly is going to be a widow before the sun goes down. Talk about raising the stakes.
After a fall day of pouring rain, the weather finally broke on August 16th, and Stark put his plan into motion. Now, he knew his militia couldn't win a traditional, head-on fight against disciplined professionals, so he didn't even try.
His plan was just pure backwoods genius. First, a little trickery. His guys had heard that the local loyalists, the Americans fighting for the British, put white paper in their hats to identify themselves. So Stark's men did the same thing. It let them get incredibly close without setting off any alarms. Second, instead of a frontal assault, he sends out multiple groups to quietly surround the enemy's fortified position from all sides. And finally, once the trap was set, Stark himself led the main charge. He said it was the hottest fight he'd ever seen, like a continual clap of thunder.
And the result? It was an absolutely stunning, lopsided victory. Just look at this. Stark's militia, those farmers and townspeople, completely devastated the professional European soldiers.
And it gets worse for the British. On top of the 207 killed, Stark's men captured another 700 enemy soldiers. I mean, you do the math. Baum's entire raiding party was essentially destroyed. It was a total catastrophe for the British Army.
This victory wasn't just a brilliant tactical win. No, it was a massive strategic turning point. The shockwaves from this one battle rippled through the entire rest of the war.
Seriously, think about the domino effect. Burgoyne lost nearly 1,000 men and supplies he could not replace. His Native American allies, who were his eyes and ears, saw the writing on the wall and just left. And most importantly, this loss directly led to Burgoyne's total surrender at the Battle of Saratoga a few weeks later. And that victory at Saratoga? That's what finally convinced France to join the war on America's side.
And what about John Stark, the general who quit? Well, the Continental Congress, probably feeling a little embarrassed, realized the massive importance of what he'd done. They finally gave him the promotion he deserved all along. He was made a brigadier general in the Continental Army, his honor completely restored.
Now, let's fast forward decades to 1809. And old John Stark gets invited to a reunion for the veterans of Bennington. He's 81 and too sick to make the trip, so he sends a letter to be read aloud as his toast, and it closed with this powerful line: "Live free or die, death is not the most of evils."
And that, my friends, is how we come full circle. Those first 4 words, live free or die, were officially adopted as the New Hampshire state motto in 1945. They are the perfect legacy for a man who valued his principles so much he was willing to go it alone to defend them. Stark's story really leaves us with a tough question, doesn't it? By basically going rogue and ignoring the chain of command, he arguably saved the American Revolution. So it makes you wonder, what's more important, following orders or fighting for what you believe is right?